Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Black Spitter Music Podcast. Today is a special day as well. Today marks the 1 year anniversary that we've been doing podcasting here on Black Spinner Circle.
All
So we've
right.
been doing this for a year now. I started last year, and we've been doing this almost every Wednesday for a whole year. It's quite a bit of shows, man. And I'm very glad. I'm very, very proud of the friendships that I've made, and not just that, the music that I've learned during this whole year. So it's been great. Today's episode we're going to have um, Charles Traynor for the BS sessions with Mark, Jerry, and Charles. And also, we're going to have Al Horta from the Be Cool or Be Podcast Out with us tonight.
Good
And
evening.
and today's episode is called Guest Pick. And today's guest pick is going to be by Charles Traynor. And what he chose was Oasis, Heathen Chemistry from the year 2002. Now, to let y'all know, I had not heard this album until Charles had picked it. So I've been studying it for about a week now. In about 2002, I was getting away from the music that was coming out at the time because I wasn't that much into the new metal or the new rock of the early 2000s. So I kind of got lost inside the deep tracks of classic rock during those years. So let's move on to Charles Traynor. Let's ask Charles, why did he choose this album, and exactly when he started listening to it. So Charles, you've got the floor.
Well, thanks for having me again, and it's an honor to be on your year anniversary show. That's pretty cool. I had no idea of that, so that's a neat thing there.
I just found out
Uh,
this morning.
oh, right on. I'm wearing a shirt. I'm probably one of the biggest Oasis fans in this little circle of people we have, and ironically, I was not like a first day buyer of this band.
Mhm.
This was a band that took me a while to get into, which would probably be a surprise as much as I do love them. I was in your boat back in 1994 after Kurt Cobain committed suicide. I just kind of said, to hell with everything. And I just deep dove in the Beatles and old school Kiss and classic just rock and roll, Rolling Stones, Who, all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of through a Beatles connection I fell into this band. There was a magazine out during the anthology from Rolling Stone, and I got it because the Beatles were on it. And there was a little article like who's an upcoming band's coming this next year, and they had Oasis in it. It was like one of those little where one artist is on the top page and the other
Mhm.
one's on the bottom. And they mentioned something about these guys going to be like they're into the Beatles or something like that. Heard Wonderwall, hated it because I was in my deep Beatles snobbery, which, Kiss fans get picked on a lot for being rough and crazy, but their Beatle fans are very fanatical too.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was in the middle of my snob. There's nothing like the Beatles. But then Don't Look Back in Anger came out and it was cool. And Champagne Supernova is what kind of did it for me. But actually, I bought Be Here Now. That was the first album I ever got from them.
Mhm.
And just, it was good at the time, but kind of lost interest, though, after a while. I was on vacation in Budapest, Hungary, and a video, because MTV there still showed music back then in '02. Not even in the States, it was a lot less music on MTV.
Big time, yeah.
One of the songs on this album was a video they just kept playing on rotation over and over and over again. I had thought Oasis was broke up at that point. So, like in '02, did you have any idea there was a new Oasis anything out? I
I
don't think
had
Oh,
many
no
people
idea.
did.
No.
well, uh,
Right.
I did. I heard press on them, and I heard about this album being released, and I got like I guess like music magazines and stuff like that, and I read about it, but I never picked it up. But continue, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't hear their stuff a lot anymore, it seemed, after Be Here Now. And it's almost like the game of soccer. Oasis stayed huge around the world. But in America they fell off basically after Be Here Now. And I think it was and Be Here Now really did not do as well as What's the Story Morning Glory. In reality, it was just super hyped. It was hyped up so highly that that's why, a couple of the songs did okay in the States, but it really kind of fell off. And the rest of their albums were not looked at as much or weren't heard as much, especially in the States. But it'd be a true fact if Oasis got back together today. They play smaller venues in the States, I think, on a reunion, but not around the world. Liam Gallagher just filled up Nebworth again on his own this last summer. That's their most famous concerts ever is at Nebworth. Anyway, they're just a huge band all around the world. And I just ended up getting back into them eventually after I got over all my listening to every deep track in the world and fell back in love with this group. And I think it's unfortunate that sometimes people get stuck on they think they're better than the Beatles or whatever. I've never really heard them say that. And even if they might have once or twice, it was always in jest. I know they really, truly do not believe that. There's no way. There's too much admiration for the Beatles. And the last little interesting side note to me is this is like a musician's band. Like a lot of other musicians love this band, from Dave Grohl to, oh man, you can name it, Lars and Kirk from Metallica, just a bunch of different people in group, and especially musicians really tend to like this band. And yes, they are known to borrow a bit. I will go that far, but so do most rock and roll bands.
Who doesn't?
Really? So I don't know. I find this album to be an interesting album. I don't want to get too deep into what I think about it before we review the tracks, but I always think of this one and one other one to refer people to if they've only heard maybe a little bit of Oasis, and because it's definitely overlooked, I think, and especially by casual fans. They're not even really aware of it.
Yeah. And in fact, Owl and I were just talking when you were about to come on that this album is going to make us kind of deep dive to other albums that we're not too familiar with. Because when I was going through the discography on Apple, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that they had made so much music that I was very unaware of. Because like everybody else, I really stopped after What's the Story of Morning Glory. I really did. Even though I have Be Here Now, I haven't heard it in so long. But that is going to change because of this album and because of what we're doing here. So I'm very excited to get into this and to hear what y'all have to say about it. I've heard this album since last Thursday, twice a day, in the morning and then in the evening, and I really liked it. So I will get to that later. Is there anything you want to add, Al, before we get started track by track?
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of days, it's really the first time I ever really heard this album too. I never went past Be Here Now, like that, the third album. That was the last one I bought by them, and then that was it. I kind of like dropped off on them, and so pulling up this album, I don't, and listening to it, I don't remember hearing any of these songs on the radio. Yeah. New York did have alternative radio, so maybe they may have played. I mean, when I played the first track, Hindu Times, I mean, it may have sounded a little bit familiar, like I may have heard it before, but if it got airplay, it didn't get airplay very long here. But I was pleasantly surprised with the album. I really was digging it, and like Andy said, it's going to make me kind of dive into the other albums I never heard by them. So thanks for doing this, Charles. I mean, I do like Oasis a lot. The first three albums they're classics to me. I played them a lot back in the day, and I remember shit, I remember the anticipation for Be Here Now when I was coming out. It
Yeah.
was so freaking high. Like, I mean, everybody was like just waiting for this album to come out. I remember the first single, You Know What I Mean, you know, the video on MTV, and it really got me like, wow, man, it's gonna be a fucking great album. And to this day, it's still I mean, I know the album gets kind of panned. You know, got panned like back in the day, and I think time has been a little bit kinder to that album. I know we're not reviewing that album today, but I love the album because I mean, maybe because I'm into progressive rock and I like epic songs, and I mean, even Noel was like, the songs are way too long on that album. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
but that was their headspace at the time. They were doing a lot of coke and stuff, and I remember seeing. I think they have like an anthology, and they would talk about all the albums. I remember seeing a interview with Noel saying at the time that album, and somebody said, the songs are a little bit too long. He's like, it's not long enough. And I thought that was pretty funny, you know, but that was their headspace about. But going back to this album, to me, this, you know, I didn't hear the albums before this. This is their fifth album?
Fifth, yeah.
Fifth. So they had Standing on the Shoulder of Giants before this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but listening to this one, it kind of seemed like kind of they went back to kind of like a throwback to a little bit of their older sound, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some songs were reminding me, but when we get to the songs, I'll talk about it. But that's, you know, like I said, I never heard this album, so I was pleasantly surprised hearing it, and I liked it a lot. So,
yeah, I feel the same way, and I'll share my sentiments when we get to it. So let's get started. We are going to be dissecting this Oasis album from 2002. This is Heathen Chemistry. I wish that we could play the tracks, but we cannot. But let's get started. All this is going to be talk, which is what we do the best. So track number 1, Charles, go for it. Hindu Times. What do you think about it?
Hindu Times. This is the harkens back to those kind of epic openers that they throw on their albums, and I would rank this as one of their better openers on all of their albums, which I've listened to a lot, obviously. And man, they throw everything but the kitchen sink at this number. You got Mellotron, you got sounds like jingle bells going on there, some great percussion. The guitar riff, that's really the only thing that would make it sound, quote unquote, to match the title, the Hindu Times.
Mm-hmm.
It was slightly Indian-esque on that guitar riff. The song was actually the reason why it's called the Hindu Times is apparently Noel found a T-shirt somewhere in a store that said the Hindu Times, so he just wrote the song based off of that. But again, the only thing you got on there is that little Indian type sound to
that
riff.
Little hook there after a couple of verses going towards
right.
it.
Liam's singing is phenomenal, I think, on it. And again, I know if I seen him in concert and they opened with this, I'd be more than happy. And I think the whole track works. And as we get into the album, I think there's going to be points where I can point some things out about Liam. When he's on point, he's one of the more underrated rock singers, I think, on the planet. When he's on point, when he's dedicated to the track and he sings it well, he sings it well. Mm-hmm. And it's a great track to me.
Yeah, and also I wanted to know, since you know more history of the band than we do, at this juncture, which is their 5th album, how many band members have come and gone, or is the original band still intact?
No, actually, when they made Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, the only people that stayed were Alan White, Liam, and Noel. All the other, his name's Gwigsy. Paul McGuigan was the original bass player, and Bonehead Paul Arthurs was the rhythm guitarist. They walked out during Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. So this is the first proper album with the replacement members
Okay.
which was Andy Bell and Gem Archer. And interesting note is Gem Archer, after Oasis broke up, and Andy Bell were in Liam's band Beady Eye, which crashed and burned. That's the one thing I've done. I'm not too wild about is the Beady Eye records.
I
But
remember that.
now Gam Archer is in Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. So
Okay.
Andy Bell, for some reason, is just out of the equation. But no, there was the original, not the original drummer. There was a different drummer on Definitely Maybe, and they fired him after Definitely Maybe for What's the Story, Morning Glory, and Alan White, I think his brother, drummed for Paul Weller. And Paul Weller and Noel Gallagher are really good friends, so it was kind of a nod to his brother, his drummer's brother getting him a gig. So at this point, it's what the band would be in the latter stages, except for the last two albums where you have Zach Starkey is the drummer on the last two records.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
which I
Wow,
think
I
is
bet
a
that was
huge upgrade there.
and also something big for the Gallagher brothers, able to play with Ringo Starr's son
Yeah,
on their record, knowing that there were such a big Beatle fans like all of us are, and being able to have that backbeat of someone in the lineage in their group. That's fantastic.
right.
What do you think about the first track, Hindu Times?
Yeah, I was going to mention the Indian style riff to it. Definitely has that Indian flavor. It's a great lead off track. I agree with Charles on that. Gets the album going. I know it was released as the first single. I read up on that. And but I think like we had an alternative station here in New York City area, and I think they played the song when it first got released. But like I said, I don't think it got. I don't think the airplay really lasted too long after it was released. But I remember reading up on this album though, like that was being released and hearing about it. And I think it's like Alan White's last album with them. I think, right, Charles?
Correct. Yeah.
So, on the first album was Tony McCarroll. He was the drummer.
Yeah.
On the first album. Going back to this track, it's got some great hooks in it. And I think Liam sounds great. It's a great opener for the album. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I really think that this was a really good opener because it has that solid sound from early Oasis. You get that anthemic sound that they were known for in the first two albums, and they brought it out to introduce this album, and that riff that we keep on talking about, or that guitar twang that's got the Indian flavor to it that we keep talking about, it is so noticeable and so catchy that it goes on throughout the track, and I think it sticks out. So I gave Hindu a 5 out of 5 start. So I was very happy with it, and I can, I never really listened to Oasis so close where I was able to hear the different voices, one being Liam and one being Noel, and I just prefer the Liam sung songs. I guess because I'm just used to that sound. Because the first couple of albums were pretty much Liam singing, and then on this one, I'm noticing that they were going kind of back and forth, track by track. Is that about right, Charles?
I think Noel's only like on maybe 3 tracks.
Yeah, he's on 3, and it was a little more than what. Yeah, you're starting to get that now, where you get more Noel tracks. There's another kind of unfortunate byproduct. There's a good part of this album, and there's a bad part of this album, and to me, not necessarily in the tunes, but first of all, this is the first Oasis album. Well, not the first one. Let me take that back. On Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, Liam attempted to write a song on it. But this was also the first one where Noel let not only Liam write songs, but he had Gam Archer and Andy Bell write songs as well. And which that sounds good on the surface, but I think you're starting to see Noel starting to break away at this point. Like he was in denial at that time that he's going to leave, even though I think he really wanted to leave because, of course, the grudge between Liam and Noel is very real. It's not just for the media. Noel does not like Liam a lot. Liam just tweeted yesterday he hopes they get back together. But
Really?
But then 2 days he'll say something out of pocket about Noel. So I mean, that's just what always goes on with these two. But I think even as early as this album, Noel maybe subconsciously was already starting to plan his exit plan on what he wanted to do away from this band. Because another hallmark of Oasis is sometimes their B-sides are better than the songs that are actually on the album. Now, this is their 5th studio album, but they have another album called The Master Plan, which is all B-sides. And it competes against all their regular studio albums easily, in my opinion. There might be one or two that's not that great, but the B-side to this single release, Idler's Dream, easily one of the better Oasis songs of that era. And it's a Noel Gallagher sung song. That's another interesting thing. If you do streaming, get all the singles as well, because there's so many B-sides on those singles that will blow your mind. That you'll be like, why wasn't that on this album?
Oh, wow.
I don't know. That's just something Noel's always done. He always puts out these great B-sides. So, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, man.
So, are you also into Noel Gallagher's band?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Are you into him?
Yeah. And so far, his 3 studio albums have been great. I thought the third one, though, was a little too experimental. A little too more experimental for me. But it still had a couple good tracks. But to me, his debut solo album, Stacks Against Oasis, works. So
yeah, because there was a lot of excitement and a lot of good press on his debut album. And I believe they toured with you too.
Yeah, well, I seen the High Flying Birds in Houston at the House of Blues, and tremendous show. And the thing about seeing him is sometimes his banter with the crowd is equally entertaining as the music is itself, because he's just as outspoken in real life, or on stage, as he would be in an interview. I think that's another reason why in America they might have not gone over as well, because Liam and Noel are not known to keep their mouth shut, and they say what's on their mind at every given moment. And in England, that seems to be relished. And in America, it comes across, I think, as arrogant or cocky or whatever. But that's what rock and roll is. That's what rock and roll stars are, in my opinion.
That's true.
At the time that they came out, though, no offense to people that love all the deep grunge and my dad took my dog away, or I got grounded and I hate life and that kind of music. Oasis was never about that. They were like Council Estate lads, which is like growing up in the projects if you're from the States. But they had a reason to do songs where they hated life, but they did live forever. And they had a whole different outlook to life and were outspoken and said what they wanted. And I think that was maybe off-putting to some American fans at the time. I dug it. I think it's great. To me, it's either you get that, you accept it. I almost liken it to Roger Waters, who's also very outspoken. I don't necessarily agree with everything Roger Waters says, but I give him credit for having the guts to say it.
Yeah.
I really don't care whether I agree with everything he says or not. At least he has the guts to do it. And that's kind of how the Gallagher brothers are. They're just out there, say whatever the hell's on their mind in any given moment. Consequences be damned, which even back then in English press and all that, there was less censorship and they could get away with a lot more. And it comes to the States and people didn't know what to make of it. I think it was a little off-putting.
Well, that and here in America, a press can bury a band if they don't
Yeah,
like them. They will bury them, and the listeners will bury them along with the media. For some reason, that's the way it is here in
yeah.
America when it comes to bands. If the media don't like them, they're going to spread it to everyone else and ruin their career here. Let's move on to track two. Track two being Force of Nature. This will be the first Noel Gallagher song on this track. What I thought about this track is that you go ahead, Charles. So, what do you think about this track? About the second one, Force of Nature?
Man, this is a crushing rock song right here, which is honestly though, what an interesting fact about Noel when he does songs, he didn't do a lot of the hard rocking songs. A lot of times he gave them to Liam, and he did the more, excuse me, thoughtful and kind of more sensitive
And they
material.
kind of switched
Usually.
places on this album, kind of.
At times, yeah. And this was just a banging rock song. And honestly, I can only think of 2 or 3 really hard rocking songs Noel did with the band.
Mm.
And actually, he's carried that on with his own solo career. Most of his stuff is more introspective. I always find it interesting that Oasis was considered an alternative band.
No,
A lot of this stuff's just straightforward rock and roll to me, but I guess so. I guess it could be considered alternative, but this is not an alternative song. Bitching about his old lady smoking his stash and taking all his money and doing whatever, and just, I think he was going through that at the time. He was getting ready to go through a divorce, or maybe had already gone through it. Could have been in part about that, but hey, whatever. It's just a good nice little crushing rock song from Noel Gallagher, and he sings it well, as I think. So
yeah, and it's so great that you bring up, how Noel was going through a divorce, because when it comes to rock and roll songwriters, they sing about what's going on in their life at the moment. There's so many artists that we can follow their path through their own life through their song. So I really like that. I mean, I didn't see it that way, but of course you've heard it a lot more than I have, and you know their background a lot more than I have. So that's a pretty cool way to look at it. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, I love this song, man. It's got a great swagger to it. I love Noel's vocals on it. I'm actually a big fan of like when Noel sings. I like that he gets like a couple tracks on an album. I think it's great because it breaks up the album a bit, And but yeah, this is a great rocker, man. I mean, it's just a simple 3-chord song, but like the swagger to it, the rhythm is just like really. I mean, I found myself like bobbing my head, listening to this song, dude, and I think it's like one of my favorites on the album, actually. So, I found this album to be, well, the first couple songs are like the rockers, and then I find it to become more. It goes into more like a slower mid-tempo ballady kind of laid back. Some songs are laid back feel to it, but I mean. The first couple of songs when we start off like real rocking and stuff like that. Not to say that it's a bad album that it goes into. Like I found the whole album to be solid. But yeah, I mean this is like one of the more rock and heavier tunes on the album. And again, I love the swagger to it, the rhythm, man. And just I found myself like really like I was cranking it in the truck earlier, my work truck earlier, streaming it, and it sounded great. So I found the production on this album to be, because Charles and I were talking about this online the other day. Like the early Oasis albums, they brick walled them. Like they pushed all the levels into like the red. And while I think they did that just so they do that they want their songs to be louder. Like when it gets played on the radio, like after a song, when an Oasis song comes on, they want it to hit. They want the loudness to come out in the radio and really have people like take notice of it. What happens with that though is what people don't realize. I mean, sound engineers need to realize is that when a song of yours gets played on the radio, it gets compressed even more anyway, because radio itself has compressors to it. They want to bring all the tracks kind of at the same level. You know, when they play one song after another, they don't want one song blaringly loud, you know, after like a quiet song and all that stuff. So they kind of have their own compressors. So these mastering engineers don't need to compress these albums so much, because when it gets played on the radio, it's going to get compressed anyway. But anyway, like Oasis was one of the first bands to really like kind of push these levels, like really, you know, into the red. And it leaves, you know, I find that like when I listen to an Oasis album, I can't listen to it all the way through because my ears get fatigued from listening to it. So I got to take breaks as I listen. I found that this album was a little bit better mastered. It had a little more breathing space to it than the earlier albums, but that's getting into technical talk. But anyway, I love this song. Like I said, it's a good, you move your head to it. So I would definitely give this song like a 5 out of 5 for me, you know, because I love Noel's vocals still.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about listening to a Oasis album. This one just seemed to be smooth all the way through. You know what I mean? It wasn't so much in your face, you know. So that's what I really liked about this album too. Track number 3, Hung in a Bad Place. It's got that great line, "My God woke up on the wrong side of the bed." Dude, I love that line. I think it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant. And is this Noel singing? I think.
On Hung in a Bad Place?
Yeah.
No. And
It's
that
Liam.
that lyric's from the lyric you mentioned from Little by Little.
Oh.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about "Hung in a Bad Place." That's the third track. Sorry about that.
First, no problem. First song written by an outside member or a new member of the group by Gam Archer.
Mm-hmm.
I find this one to be slightly filler to me. But that's because I've listened to every Oasis album over and over and over and over again. So I'm stacking it against all the body of their work. Now, maybe if I heard this the first time, I'd probably be like, oh, it's a nice little energetic track. I will give it this, though. I didn't know it. I didn't see it at the time, but it was used in a Victoria's Secret commercial in the States, I guess, at one point. I read that. So I'm sure I didn't bother Mr. Archer and make a little money on that. But again, I think in the context of their body of work as a whole, a little bit fillerish, especially compared to the previous two. It almost sounds like a person trying to write a quote-unquote Oasis song, which makes sense when it isn't written by Noel Gallagher. Noel Gallagher is my favorite songwriter in the band, so by far. But we're going to notice, I think Liam stepped up his game a hair when we get more into this album. But this one it's okay. I mean, but in the end, I think it's slightly forgettable compared to the standout tracks on the album.
Yep, that's very true. I'll go ahead with "Hung in a Bad Place."
I like the feedback opening of it. It's a pretty heavy tune as well. Like I said, the beginning of the album, first couple songs really are like, you know, pretty high energy, you know, rocking songs, pretty heavy tune. It's got Liam's vocal, like signature vocal style in here. It kind of reminded me of My Big Mouth off of Be Here Now. Kind of had like the same kind of like style to it. So Gem Archer maybe kind of, it seems like maybe he tried to kind of rewrite that track a little bit and kind of add that flavor. I don't know. I kind of hear that in this song, and I like that song off of Be Here Now. Actually, that's a great song. So I kind of, because if it reminded me of that, I dug this song as well. I thought it was a good track. So, and I was surprised that was written by Gem actually. So, you know, but I think it's a solid track. I think it keeps the album moving, you know. So, I like it, man. I mean, I'm not really rating these songs, but I mean, if I was going to rate it, I'd probably give it a, 3.5 out of 5, I guess, So,
Yeah, that's where I'm at about this one. It was like a 3 out of 5 for me. But then after this song, it gets to the it get, this when we're getting to Stop Crying Your Heart Out. This starts a little sweet that I heard in my mind. That was kind of like what Al was saying. It was kind of like a, I don't want to say pop rock, but kind of like mellow driven Brit rock, if that makes sense. That's how I felt on this next track. Stop Crying Your Heart Out. It's got like that um um what's the name of the song I'm trying to think of? Um don't I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Charles. What do you think of this Stop Crying Your Heart Out?
Well, this this was the video I seen in Budapest on constant rotation, and
Mm-hmm.
to put people's perspectives about what was out at the time, I believe it was the real Slim Shady. They showed that over and over again. Kelly Osbourne, Papa Don't Preach. Ugh. Huh.
Well,
George Michael, Wag the Dog. I mean, we were in Europe, by the way, and then they constantly played this. These are the ones that I remembered, and immediately I really was like, "Oh wow, Oasis is still together." I didn't know they were still doing anything.
right.
I loved it the first time I heard it. Just a great ballad, and I would have to believe this is Liam's best vocal performance on the album. We're gonna get to some other tracks, I think, where he wasn't as engaged, and I think sometimes you can tell on some of the tracks he's just doing it just to do it, and on other ones he puts his heart and soul into it, and when he does, he nails it. Reminds me, not necessarily the style of the song, but it reminds me of vocal performances like on Slide Away, on Definitely Maybe, which was a tremendous vocal performance from Liam. Champagne Supernova, whichever one of the great tracks that he has sung well on. His singing is phenomenal on this track. Just a great, great, great ballad that I think a lot of hair bands would have died to do. I mean, this is how you do a ballad. Noel Gallagher is just a tremendous songwriter, period. And if people could drop their prejudices about the group and listen to the tunes, this guy is super talented beyond belief. And if you don't believe it, there's versions of Noel singing it, and it's equally as good.
Oh wow,
So,
really?
well, if you get the deluxe of Be Here Now, I know we're not doing Be Here Now, but he demos that whole album. And it's probably better than the actual album, the way it was put out. And it's just Noel singing all the tracks. So, but love the sparse piano in it. And it's still, in the end, it's an optimistic song. And the video is pretty cool too. So check it out. And I think I think Liam's probably best performance on the album.
You see, that's what I was trying to get at. This track reminds me of Don't Go Away in Anger. I heard her
Yeah.
say. That's
Yeah.
what this song reminds me of, and that's one of my favorite Oasis songs. But I'm pretty sure if I dig deeper instead of the hits that were released, I will find more tracks like this. So that's what this song really did remind me of. What did you think about this track? Stop Crying Your Heart Out.
I agree with Charles, man. I think it's a great ballad. I like the production of it. I think there's like strings on it and stuff like that. Great piano. I love the call and response vocals on it. Yeah, and Liam sings his heart out on this one, man. I agree. It's one of his best vocal performances on the album, and it's probably the reason why it was a single. I mean, it's a shame. Like, I guess after Be Here Now, I guess America kind of like turned their back on Oasis because, I don't know, maybe they were kind of sick of their arrogance or what they, Be Here Now, they call that like the death of like Britpop, that album after was out here in America. Britpop kind of ended after that album because it was for a couple of years, man, 2-3 years. These British bands were really like the Britpop movement was really, really big here in the States, and it was all that.
Roses.
Yeah, there was always that big rivalry between Oasis and Blur. You always heard about that, and then after Be Here Now, it kind of just they faded away here. But this any Justice in the World, this song would have been a big hit here. Had it been released probably in 95, 96, it would have been huge for them. So I love the song though. Great song, man. Charles hit everything, the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, it's great to have an expert of this album and of this band with us tonight. The next track we're going to get to is Songbird. I was doing some reading, so and it kind of blew me away. So is this the first penned song by Liam? Is that right, Charles?
No.
Okay.
It's his first good one.
Okay.
He did well in the early days when Oasis was called The Ride before Noel joined the band. Liam was the main songwriter, and there was a few songs out there on YouTube. I believe they're not very good at all, and so then Noel joined the band and said, I'm writing everything. That's it, and it was on Standing at the Shoulder of Giants. Liam wrote a song called Little James, which to me it's putrid. If I would have only ever heard that song, I wouldn't be on this show today. I would have never listened to Oasis. I would have.
Wow, is that bad, huh?
To me it is. It's really, really bad. It's like Oasis version of Brandon, my Motley Crue. And it's also about his stepson. I don't know what this is. It's hard to pull off songs about your kids for some reason. I don't know. To me,
it's
Stevie
because
Wonder.
I guess the listener doesn't care.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder did a great one with "Isn't She Lovely," but I mean, it just doesn't. I don't know. There's just something about it, and that song is very poor. But Songbird is not poor. It's not poor at all. Very simple. A G chord, a D chord, an E minor chord, just over and over again. Nice little flow to the song, quick to the point. Kind of interesting following up Stop Crying Your Heart Out with Songbird, though, to me. But that's the only thing. I don't know if I'd have done all that mellow in the middle. I would have probably mixed the rock a little more between the mellow. I think it's okay. I mean, I'm not upset with it. It's there, but I just think it's kind of like weird to go ballad to ballad like that. But this is a love song to his wife at the time, Nicole Appleton, who was in a group called All Saints, I believe.
I remember that band.
British girl group or whatever.
Right.
And this was about her, and Noel gave it high praise, actually. He didn't he didn't really say much about Songbird. Little James. But he did talk about Songbird, and so you know what? He pulled out a decent little song here. So, and that's pretty much what it is. It's a decent little song. And compared to what he had tried before, it's fantastic. It's Blackbird or something. I don't know. I mean, especially if you've heard Little James. He has another couple songs on this album coming up too. But I think this is his best one that he wrote on the album.
And during the the passing of Christine McVie was just a month ago. So I was trying to connect if this song was written for her back then, with both of them being English, and the piano parts that they really put in here was pretty interesting. I kept on thinking of maybe this song was written for Christine McVie because of that little piano riff throughout the song. So that's what I thought about the song. Yeah. But you're right. It's a very lovely song. And that's what made me want to look more into it. And that's when I was reading that Liam had read it. But you went ahead and went deeper into it. What do you think about the song, Songbird?
Yeah, I think like Charles said, Noel said, I think Liam pulled out a really nice song here. It's a beautiful song. I heard a lot of different instrumentation in it. Acoustic guitar, piano. I thought I even heard like harmonica or like maybe some accordion in there or something like that. Kind of sounded a little bit like that. I
think
don't
it
know.
might have been more Mellotron.
Mellotron. Okay, maybe
Yeah.
that. It kind of reminded me a little bit of REM, to be honest with you. I thought it was a little REM-ish, a little bit with the instrumentation and everything. And great vocal by Liam, and he really sings beautifully on it. So I think it's one of the upper songs on the album for me. Like, this is a really, really good one. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I thought that this was a little highlight too, and like Charles was mentioning, the middle part here is pretty interesting of how they kind of put ballad, almost three ballads back to back, because we're about to get into another, not quite balladry, but a little bit more pep to it, little by little, which I've already quoted the lyric incorrectly, but I really love that lyric in this
Yeah.
album that really stood out to me. So why don't you talk about this song, Charles, little by little?
My favorite track on the album.
Okay.
Noel song. I'm kind of with Al. I mean, I love Liam's voice, but I'm kind of more of a Noel guy in the big scope of it.
Because of the writing and all.
The writing, I think he has a little more variance to his voice. He's not like a standout Paul Rogers rip it up type singer or anything like that, but I don't know. You can always, to me, feel a little more emotion in his voice or something at times. Like, he can tackle that sensitive type material at times a little easier than Liam, even though Liam did great on Stop Crying Your Heart Out. Liam can sing ballads, there's no doubt. There's just something about the way Noel sings songs. It could be because he writes them, so he knows exactly what
The emotion would be.
Right. The song is somewhat Pink Floydish to me. It's got like a Pink Floyd type vibe to it. First time I heard it, I was like, "Oh wow, he's getting with Pink Floyd now. We're moving beyond T-Rex and David Bowie and all these other people he's emulated." Slade, he's a big, huge Slade fan. That's where you get a lot of anthem-y type sound. I sent out there this week, "Come On Feel the Noise" was the Oasis cover. Now it was the talk about the compression. That was done during this album was also self-produced. Well, actually, Noel. So basically, Noel produced it. Anytime you see Oasis, it's basically Noel.
No.
And it's just a tremendous song, man. I mean, this is what life's all about sometimes, little by little. Your life just goes down a little bit. We get older and this and that. And this was definitely an introspective song. And I think it's one of the highlights of the latter years of Oasis. I think it's definitely one of the better tracks they put out, after, say, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is an anomaly in the Oasis canon because it's the most experimental type sounding album they did. Very psychedelic. Broke character from those first three records. And then now you get into this phase of the band. I definitely think it could be the best track of those last three albums. It's that good to me. And it's usually a highlight whenever it was a highlight on Oasis shows back then. And if Noel throws it in the sets on his band, which he does seemingly every other tour, it's a highlight. And it's definitely a deep fan track by far. And great video to it as well.
Oh, wow. Wow, so it was that big of a hit where there was a video and they released.
Yeah, this was a single again. Yeah, another single release from the album, and I just think, it's my favorite song on the album. So, man, it's a 5 of 5 to me. And I don't think Liam could have pulled the song off. I think this is definitely one Noel should have done. But again, just unlike on the previous records, we're starting to see more and more Noel sung tracks. And again, I think subconsciously he was already kind of planning his exit strategy because a lot of his solo material now is in the vein, when it's really, really good, is in the vein of Little by Little. It's very similar to that style.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you like that type of song, you'll probably love his solo work for sure.
I
But I
should
love the
really
song.
dig into that. I should
Yeah.
really dig into solo stuff after I get a hold of Oasis first, and then I'll move on. What do you think about this track, Out Little by Little?
Great song, man. Very emotional vocals from Noel. You can feel the emotion as he's singing it, like Charles said. Yeah, I felt a little bit of like kind of a little psychedelic tinge to it, little Pink Floydish, like Charles said. I can hear it a little bit, like a little ambience in there. Great. I don't know, man. It's one of the upper songs on the album as well. Like, if Charles is saying that the high flying birds have like songs like this, then I definitely want to check them out, because I dug this song a lot. And I really have not much more to add, man. Charles really, he's the expert on Oasis, so
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just kind of following suit here, but he's right, man. It's definitely a top tier song on the album.
Yeah,
I give it a 5 out of 5 too.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're both saying that Charles is hitting on all the targets on these songs, but that's what this episodes are supposed to be about. These
Yeah.
guest picks are supposed to be about albums we're not familiar with, and we give our guests, why don't you tell us about your favorite album? So this is the perfect way I wanted a show like this to go. Just like the way you taught us about Dig. Now we're learning about this album by Oasis. The next track is called "A Quick Peep," which is an instrumental. It's about an instrumental that's about a couple of minutes long. It's a nice little ditty. Um, I liked it, especially after it was kind of like a little bridge from a few ballads to what's going to end the album here. What do you think about this instrumental,
Uh,
Charles?
Written by Andy Bell, the only Andy Bell contributed to the track. If it sounds kind of like a Paul McCartney Wings instrumental type song to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty much, you nailed it. I mean, it's about a minute or two at best, and it's just a little interlude. They've done better instrumentals, but it's I mean, I find that on a lot of records that have these little interludes, there's not too much to say about it. It's not annoying. I don't necessarily skip it because it's so short.
Yeah.
And but it's just what it is. It's just a little interlude. Kind of interesting that that's the first Andy Bell contribution to the band. Maybe he was a little nervous to bring too much to the table, but he would bring more on the next two albums. That's for sure.
Oh, really cool. But the thing is that you see, when I was hearing this, I was like, oh wow, Oasis did an instrumental. That's cool. But you're just saying that they've done other instrumentals that are better than this.
Yeah,
I didn't know that about them.
by
So
far.
that's really cool to know about. Al, what do you think about this instrumental?
It's just a minute and change. I thought it was a cool little little break in the album. Kind of flows into the next song that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So it really kind of, I wouldn't say it's like an intro to the song, but it's just a cool little ditty that flows into the next song. That's it. Kind of, and I think it was pretty cool. At least Andy Bell got a contribution on the album as well. I guess that just shows that Noel's kind of, letting people like contribute. I didn't know about the exit strategy, like Charles is saying, but interestingly enough, skipping ahead to their last album that they put out, I actually had tickets to see them when they were going to play Madison Square Garden. At the time, I won the tickets actually off a radio station, but then and I was gonna go see them and stuff. And I'd never seen Oasis before, which cool. But at the time, I was actually unemployed. I was out of work for like about 18 months. So my daughter had just been born. So she had just come home from the hospital because she was born 4 months early. So she was in the hospital for 4 months. Then she came home, and I remember that was in 2008. So I think in December of 2008, they were going to play Madison Square Garden. And I had gotten laid off of work already a few months. So, and I had tickets for it. And I was like, you know what? I kind of, money was a little tight. We were going through a bit of a recession at the time. So I ended up selling the tickets, which in hindsight now is, I wish I never did. I wish I would have went to see them because that was their last tour. That was their last time around here. So I never got a chance to see them live. But anyway, I'm skipping ahead to the last album, but I just want to throw it out in there. But coming back to this song, yeah, it's a cool little instrumental that flows into the next song, which we'll get to. So,
yeah, and the next song that Al's talking about is called Probably All in My Mind, which is my favorite song on this album. It's got a very strong psychedelic feel to it, kind of a hark back to Champagne Supernova kind of type. Maybe not as extreme, but it certainly has the colorful sound to it, where you can hear and feel even an homage to mid Beatles psychedelic sound, a la Magical Mystery Tour, and that's why this song really stuck out to me. This album really does have a lot of different kind of sounds to it, and that's why that song sticks out to me. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it, Charles?
Well, if you love this one, you're gonna love the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants album, because pretty much the whole album's in this vein. And it's kind of a throwback to that album a little bit, very psychedelic. Liam sings it pretty well, but there's a lot of effects on his voice.
Yes.
He sings it pretty well. Interesting side note was, I guess, when they made this album, the music was done for months, and Liam took forever to even just show up in the studio to do the vocals. And Noel was putting it out in the press. He was very frustrated. He's like, "We got a hell of an instrumental album here. If the singer can get up his ass."
Shade.
Yeah. So again, with the
typical Liam,
with the exit strategy thing, I think it was subconscious. He was not saying anything at the time that he was going to leave, but I really do think there was a point where he was getting ready, like setting them up to be like, "Okay, go ahead and write some more songs. I'm going to do my thing here. I want to make sure I get more songs on these albums where I sing and I do," because really when we say his songs, I mean, most of them are his songs anyway, but he's just having Liam sing them. But it's a good track, but it's not as good as some of the great tracks on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. But again, I find this when I review Oasis. I've only reviewed Oasis a few times, and usually that's the way it'll be, is that somebody will hear said album the first time and they really, really enjoy a track that I might find, it's okay. Yeah, like, to me, it's an okay track, but that's because I've listened to all this other stuff, so I can compare it to that.
Right.
You might still believe that after listening to Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, because this one hit you first. But Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, every song is pretty much in the vein of the sound of this song. So if you like that, you're going to love Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. You might even like Little James. I don't know. We'll see. Reviewer,
I will start to listen to stuff.
One reviewer I did it with said he liked the song. So, I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean,
yeah,
as I've said, music's subjective. So it's whatever we get out of it. And it's a good track. I think it's one of the better tracks on the latter half of the album. I will say that. So,
what do you think about this track, Al? Probably All in My Mind.
I dug the song. It reminded me a lot of Rain by the Beatles. It gave me that vibe, with the bass line and even the guitars. It gave me that vibe of the song Rain. Kind of almost the same, when I was listening to this, I kind of went back and I pulled up Rain by the Beatles. I'm like, because the bass line was kind of reminding me of it, you know. So, which I love that song too. And so yeah, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is reminiscent of this song. I'm definitely gonna check that album out because I love this song. I thought this song was great, you know. Again, like listening to this whole album, which I'd never heard before, it was a real pleasant surprise. You know, really thought it was a pretty damn solid Oasis album, really good. You know, I thought like, you know, because they slipped of their popularity in America. I mean, I remember they were still huge in Europe and you know other parts of the world. Like Charles was saying before, like soccer is bigger outside of the United States. That's kind of how like Oasis became. But I thought maybe because they slipped here in America that their quality, their albums went down or something. It's not the case here. So I dug the song a lot. So it reminded me of the Beatles. Obviously, their big influence is the Beatles, but it reminded me of Rain a lot. So the bass line was like really reminiscent of it. So I don't know if you guys hear that, but I did.
Yeah, a bit.
So
You know, it's so funny that you mentioned Rain and baseline because the other day I was running errands and I had the radio on the Beatles channel, and man, I never really noticed, or maybe my radio in my car was set differently, but man, the bass line on Magical Mystery Tour by Paul on the track, damn, he was hitting that shit hard. That's such a great bass work. And that's another thing.
Magical Mystery Tour is actually, I find that to be a rather underrated Beatles. I love that album a lot. I think because when I was a kid, that might have been really one of the first Beatles albums I had because of I think I told this story before on here, but my dad owned an apartment building and some guy abandoned his apartment and left everything behind.
Yeah.
He left behind albums and, you know, stereo equipment, video game consoles. Just, I mean, this was like the mid 80s. So, and I remember Magical Mystery Tour being one of the vinyl albums I left behind and, you know, being younger. I mean, I heard the Beatles before, but I never really owned the Beatles album. I never really, you know, I was just starting to buy music on my own at that time by the, you know, early to mid 80s. So, but I think Magical Mystery Tour might have been like one of the first full Beatles albums I ever heard. And to this day, I still love it. I love that album, man. And I think that's rather underrated in their catalog. You know, there's so many great songs on there. So, but yeah, that's just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, but that was also one of my first Beatle albums I bought. I remember my buddy owned a record store in Corpus Christi. I forgot the name of the place, but I will ask him. But I remember I bought Abbey Road and Magical Mystery Tour from him.
Yeah.
There were the re-releases for that year. I guess I bought them in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
And it's always been one of my favorites. I think it's because it's not highly regarded, maybe because of Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane were singles that were added to the album. You know, because they were released like a year or maybe a year and a half before Magical Mystery Tour, and they stuck them in there. So I don't know, but still, I mean, I think it's a phenomenal.
Who doesn't
album.
highly regard them? I don't understand. Who doesn't? Because it's not me. I mean,
Oh no! I think it's a great album, but it's just that
I'm walrus on it. I mean,
it's just that when they're talking about Beatle albums, they're always talking about Sgt.
It
Pepper,
does get
Revolver,
forgotten for some reason. I don't understand
it gets
that.
skipped. It gets skipped when they're naming all the albums that came out before and after it.
Yeah, I
know,
don't
I
understand that. It's
feel-
awesome.
Yeah, I just feel that it doesn't get name checked as often as the other. You know, Revolver always gets name checked. White Album,
Sgt. Pepper, Abbey Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So
It's
I mean,
kind of like Sgt. Pepper Part 2, though, slightly. It's in the same vein of somewhat of Sgt. Pepper, but man, it's awesome. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Baby You're Rich, man. Listen to the bass line on that one. That is some killer fucking bass work, and just I love it. I love the Beatles. So
yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Beatles did no wrong.
Yeah, they don't have a bad album. But
No, not at all. But let's get back to Oasis. The next song called She Is Love. Now, this one here, the first couple of times I heard the album, it didn't resonate with me. I was like, ugh, no, that's kind of a bad song. But probably yesterday and the day before it started, I really started to dig it after getting more and more spins into the song, that She Is Love. What do you think about this track, Charles?
It was a double A side single with Little by Little.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one of the B sides of that is a great cover I sent to Al the other day of My Generation, which I think is one of the better covers they've done.
Yeah,
and
good, man.
but back to She Is Love, I'm the same way towards the song. Initially, when I first heard it, I was kind of like, it's a little too light in the loafers for me or something. I don't know. It's throwing around the tulips a little too much for me. But now I love it. I just think it's a great little love song. Now he was hooked up with his girl, I believe. So see, again, you're getting more of that biographical kind of story, and he'll touch on this more in the next two albums after this, about falling in love with his current wife, who he's still with. And just a great little love song, and Noel sang it, and again, he did a lot more. I don't know, he didn't do a lot of these either in their history, these little love song ditty deals. He'd probably give them to Liam to bang it out, but he did this one, and I think it's probably because I'm assuming it was personal to his now wife, and that's why he chose to do it. And yeah, it's a grower. I think overall it is a grower. I don't know. That was my impression too. The first probably 20 times I heard it, I was probably like, yeah, skip. I'm not interested in this one. But I do appreciate it now. It's not my favorite Noel track on the album, but it's still it's a decent little ditty he did here, I think.
It's a solid little track is what it is. And it fits in good with the feel of the album. And sometimes you'll feel those songs, because if this song was in any other context, I don't think I would like it as much as I do here.
Yeah.
What do you think about She Is Love?
Yeah, another Noel track. I don't know why, but I don't know. I get like a Kinks vibe from the song. I don't know, like when a Kinks did like a ballad or something. I kind of got a little bit of that vibe from the song. I don't know. Sometimes I hear things and I don't know. It just reminds me. I can't name check a Kinks song where it sounds like maybe there may have been little parts or something, maybe towards the end, where it kind of reminded me a little bit of Celluloid Heroes a little bit or something. But I don't know why. Maybe I just had that song in my mind or something when I was listening to this song. But anyway, it's a good tune. Like, it, like you guys said, it's not the upper part of the album for me, but again, I always like when Noel sings though. So that, I don't know, I dig the Noel songs a lot. So, but this is a little bit of a lesser one, but it did grow. It grew on me too. It's still. I guess I didn't spend enough time with the album. I've only listened to the album maybe 3-4 times in the last 2-3 days. I didn't really listen to it last week when you guys were talking about we were going to do this. So I kind of came late. I was like, I better pull it up and start listening to it. And so I probably listened about 4 or 5 times actually. I listened to it before I went to bed. But I fell asleep to it, and then during work I would pull it up in my truck and listen to it. So. Maybe the song will grab me a little bit more, but I just still think in the context of the album, it's still a solid song. Like I said, I really love the album. It's really a great Oasis album. I think, it stands up great with their early stuff. So,
and a little magical mystery tour thing with a little recorder in it.
Yeah, there you go.
The Fool on the Hill. It's got that little recorder going through it too. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you mentioned this about listening to it in your truck and going to bed. Today I was listening to it at work in my little work area, and this girl, she's probably about 21 or 22, and she asked me straight out. I was all like, "Man, you're gonna piss off my friend Charles." She's like, "Is that Nickelback?" I go, "No, that's not Nickelback." I said, "You're not even close." I said, and if my friend Charles heard that, he'd be very upset with you. You're comparing it to Nickelback.
Yeah,
But
God bless her.
but
Did
the
she
second
like
one,
it though? Did she like
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, because I kept on because she kept on hearing it because she was working next to me today.
cool.
Then the second to last track is called "Born on a Different Cloud." This one left a little impression on me, which was to me it sounded like a Oasis track, which really didn't have that much to it in my opinion. What do you think about it, Charles?
Liam track that he wrote, 6 minutes, probably not his cup of tea yet. Not his style yet. Not to write these long, drawn out tracks. And interestingly enough, another one he didn't seem that engaged in vocally. And it's his song, which I guess he didn't care. It was just if he was feeling it, he felt it. And if he didn't, he did it. And I think it always comes through on his performances. And not his style yet. I think he pushed his boundary a little bit too much as far as a writer here. And definitely one of the lesser tracks on the album to me.
Okay, so I guess that's the way I felt about it because the way that it was presented by the singer felt the same way about it.
I guess
This
so.
performance, I'm guessing. You know, what did you think of "Born on a Different Cloud"?
I wasn't blown away by it, but I do like the slide guitar work. That I guess that's Noel that's doing the slide guitar work, unless Gam does it. I don't know who was doing it, but there's some nice slide guitar work in there that I dug. But that's really the only thing like I really kind of really liked about the song. You know, I think this is the dip in the album for me. It wasn't like I wasn't blown away by it. You know, but it wasn't like terrible either. You know, it's a decent song. You know,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah, it
all I
was a
got
song
on that
that's
one.
just there.
See that song "Idler's Dream"? They should have put that B-side. They should have put that on here and put this as a B-side. That's what traditionally most bands do.
See, you're right about like the B-sides and Oasis, man. Oasis is like one of those bands that wrote great. I mean, the B-sides are like that Master Plan album. Actually, I heard that one, and that's a great collection of B-sides, man. I have the What's the Story, Morning Glory, the deluxe version of it.
Yeah.
That's got some great B-sides on there. It collects like I guess the B-sides and stuff on there, and the demo stuff that Noel would do, which is really cool. I find the demo stuff that Noel does really interesting. You know how he kind of builds the song. You know, everything's more stripped down actually, so it's kind of cool to hear it that way. And sometimes I prefer it that way too. Like, you know, sometimes the problem with me with Oasis is they get a little overblown on the albums. Like they layer too much shit on top of each other. Especially like "Be Here Now," man. I mean, it's just like there must be 1,000 guitars. There must be 1,000 guitars layered on each other on that album, you know. And just it gets to a point where the album is. I mean, I love the album, but when I get like halfway through the album, I feel like I have to stop for a little while and take a break. It's just kind of like overload, you know what I mean? So
I can hardly make it through the track. It's getting better, man, without laughing because I think it's so ridiculous. There's so much guitar and just wee 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 wee. Like even Noel said, it's like a Wayne's World guitar on there. It just isn't that. I just start laughing because it's cocaine set to music.
Yeah,
that's
dude,
what they've said.
They were doing a ton of cocaine at that time.
The producer was on cocaine. Yeah, the band was on cocaine. It was just ridiculous. That I love it, but it's kind of a ridiculous album at times. But it's better songs than this song, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
This one was kind of weaker track on the album. But there's B-sides they could have replaced it with.
Yeah, that's why I said there's kind of a little bit of a dip in the album for me. But overall, I mean, the album is still solid, you know. But you know, this song isn't a lower part of the album for me. So
And it's so funny that y'all talk about the B sides because people don't talk. People don't talk about their B sides that much, and other bands of the '90s, even though this was a 2002 album, but there were bands like the Pumpkins that had fantastic B sides.
I was gonna say, Smashing Pumpkins was another band where their B sides were like probably better than like a lot of
Than
the
the
album
albums
tracks.
themselves. Yeah,
Pearl Jam was
Pearl
another
Jam
one
was
that had
another
great
one.
B sides. You know,
Soundgarden, all those had B sides
yeah.
that were not part of the studio albums because there's a lot of pop songs or what have you where the B sides is just another track off the album. And the Beatles, of course, taught us, the single and a B is not going to be on the album. You got to get that separately. That's different. Which a lot of these bands followed suit of the Beatles. The last track called "Better Man," very odd that there's a 23-minute gap.
Well, it's not actually a
between.
last track. It's not actually a lot. There's a hidden track after that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that okay? Is that what it is? It's a hidden track.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll let Charles explain because he's more the expert. But
Yeah.
there's silence. There's this track, and then there's a lot, like almost 30 minutes worth of silence, and then the next
silence. Right.
Which in the '90s when the CD era was big, they used like a lot of bands used to like do shit like that.
Right.
Let the album like run for like a long time, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, you're not thinking about like you don't end the album, and you're just kind of doing whatever, and all of a sudden a song pops up.
It starts blurring up.
So
it's like imagine if that was on an album. I mean, side 3 would just be nothing.
Yeah.
But go ahead and talk about this album. No, I'm sorry. Talk about this track, the last track on the album called "Better Man." Why is there such a gap? I mean, what do you know about it, Charles?
Well, Better Man itself is a little short. It's not short, but it's about 4 minutes long, and I think a better track than "Born on a Different Cloud." But again, not probably the greatest track ever in the history of the planet, but another Liam song. He wrote it. I think it's a little bit better than the previous, but why that gap? I have no idea. I have no earthly. I didn't even know about this until maybe 6 months ago. I think I fell asleep with it on, and it must have kept playing, and then it woke me up. And the hidden track's called "The Cage," and it's a strange instrumentally kind of thing. And I don't know. I guess they took the Her Majesty method to the extreme.
Way
super long gap. Yeah. I bet there's a lot of people that don't even know that track exists because they just hear "Better Man" finish and okay, that's it, and then they go on about their business and go listen to Nickelback or whatever they like. I don't know. And then, I mean, for the longest time, I didn't know about it either. And you had hit me up about that. Like, what's this deal here? I say, oh, there's a track after that. You just got to keep waiting for it and waiting for it and waiting for it. It's
I just
kind of a strange choice to do. Now, the Japanese pressings of the album omit that. And it
okay.
They list "The Cage" as a separate track, and it goes immediately into it like a standard record.
Okay.
But I don't have it. I just read about it. I was interested once I figured out there was this hidden track. I didn't know about that for years. And why they chose to do that, I have no idea. I mean, maybe to be funny or cute or I don't know. The last album I remember that did it I had was Velvet Revolver did that on their second on Libertad. Okay. They put a couple hidden tracks like that, but it wasn't as long as this. This is like a 30-minute gap or something where it's just silence. So
yeah, it's a big gap. I kept on fast forwarding it with my finger. It just kept going on and on and on and on.
It's odd. It's odd. And as far as Better Man, it's okay. Again, it's kind of a pedestrian track compared to Noel's work, I believe. It's probably Liam's second best song on the album, but I think Songbird blows away the other two easily. Yeah. So kind of disappointing ending to the album overall for me.
It is
compared to the rest of the album. I think She Is Love is probably the proper ending. After that, I usually just stop listening, honestly, and go on to another album. But it's just a middle of the road track with an interesting, weird quirk to it. If you can stomach waiting 30 minutes for the hidden track to Kate, which I don't know is that tremendous to wait on, but it's just interesting. So
Yeah, it is pretty interesting that we're talking about the song, and we're talking more about the silence than the actual track itself. What do
the
you think
best
about
part of most Motley Crue albums is that
the
silence between the
silence?
next tracks. So
What do you think about this track?
Who's the one that always makes a joke on Facebook, or like, you know, when a Hagar Van Halen album comes up, the best part of it's the silence between the tracks.
I don't know, but it usually is.
Somebody makes
not
a joke.
Me. Yeah.
I'm not that harsh on them. I mean, I like some of the Sammy stuff, but I mean, I find that hilarious though. But anyway, Better Man. Yeah, I agree with Charles, man. It's not like it's not the strongest way to end the album off.
It's not.
You know,
yeah.
You know, the album ended a little weak to me on this one too. I didn't find the song to like blow me away or anything like that. So when I was reading up on the album, I heard about like the long gap. So like, yeah, I fast forwarded to the instrumental. The instrumental's cool little instrumental, but you know, if anybody waits for it to come, I mean, it's not like it's gonna be like you're gonna hear "Stairway to Heaven" or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Is it worth the wait? I don't know. It's debatable. If, you know, whatever. I mean, going back to the hidden track kind of thing that a lot of these CDs had in the 90s. That's actually one of my ideas on the show that I'm going to be probably going to do is these CDs that have these hidden tracks. There's a ton of them, man. If you really read up on it. One of them is the 9 Inch Nails Broken EP. If you have that on CD, there's a hidden track way down the album on that one. There's a Cheap Trick album. It's their 97 self-titled album, which is one of my favorite Cheap Trick albums, actually. It actually has it's a hidden track, but if you load the CD in, you got to hit the rewind button when the first track is starting up, and it actually rewinds it to beyond the beginning of the album. It's
no
weird
way.
It's weird to talk about it, but yeah, when you put the CD in on your stereo, if you rewind right when the first track starts, if you hit the rewind button, it actually goes. It's like a like a pre-gap kind of thing, which is kind of like
You've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's like you know these DVDs with like these Easter eggs, you know, that they used to talk about. There's a lot of these CDs that had this shit, you know, so it's kind of cool. I kind of was getting an idea to make up a show about this stuff. So if I do, I'll let you guys know about it. And you know, it might be just a solo show for me where I discuss maybe my top albums with like that has these hidden tracks in it or whatever. But anyway, there's tons of them, man. I mean, you'll find a lot of albums that have this stuff. The CD era, they were like trying to do all this gimmicky shit, you know?
Well, because in the CD era, you were pretty much allowed to fill in almost unlimited space.
Yeah, you had 80 minutes on a CD, you know. So
yeah,
you know, for better or for worse, when the CD era came in, that's when a lot of bands got accused of having filler on the album and stuff. Because when you know, obviously the LP era, you had a nice compact 35, 40-minute album.
Right.
And that was really it. That's why so many of those albums from the vinyl era are classics from top to bottom. Once you started getting into the CD era,
it started to stretch out.
Yeah, bands felt like they had to fill in. Oh, let's do 60 minutes worth of stuff. But that's when, you know, a lot of, you know, albums were like one or two good songs, and then the rest was, you know. So.
And it's so weird because the last Neil Young, the last few Neil Young albums that I have, side 4 is blank on on the albums I'm buying. So it's only side 1, 2, and 3, and 4 is blank.
Oh, okay.
Which I find very pissed off when I find out that side 4 is empty. But that concludes our show tonight of guest pick with Charles of for the album Oasis, the Heathen Chemistry, which I thought was a fantastic album.
Great album.
I'm glad that Charles introduced it to us. It was fantastic. Thank you, Charles, for this pick. And
thanks for having me. Glad you guys enjoyed
of course.
it.
So now
his next pick is going to be Extreme's debut album.
Yeah.
On April Fool's Day. Anyway.
Yeah. Or Sammy Hagar's greatest hits.
But, tomorrow on the BS Sessions with Mark, Jerry, and Charles, we are going to be doing our top 16. We're going to make our own album of top 16 songs from the early era of rock from 1950 to 1959. So join us for that one tomorrow. We will all be there along with Jerry and Charles, and Edwin Canastrossi will be there with us as well. That's going to be a fun one. And next week here on Black Spinner Circle, we are going to be doing the top 10 plus 5 albums of 1983. There was a lot of great albums. I don't know if I'm going to keep that top 10 or no, I'm going to have to keep that top 10. So y'all are more than welcome. Do y'all want to join us? We got a panel for that already as well. So that's going to be a fun show. So any final words, guys?
Well, just real quick again, for folks at home, this is a good album, but I would recommend Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, the one before it, or Don't Believe the Truth as well, right? Sandwiched between these two albums. And and if you like the Noel tracks, check out the Noel Gallagher High Flying Birds. He only has 3 LPs at this point. But Liam Gallagher's solo work is tremendous as well. Probably skip the BDI, look into his solo albums, and they got better each album. So, and his current one, Come On You Know, was my number 2 picked album of 2022. I think it's a really solid album. So, and tune into the BS, and thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, always, man. You are very, very welcome. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for introducing this album to us. Al, any final words?
Yeah, thanks, Charles, for introducing me and getting me beyond the first 3 albums, which I stopped at. I was pleasantly surprised once again by this album, so I'm going to check out the other ones. And definitely I'll check out Noel's stuff and Liam's stuff too when I get, caught up on this stuff. Yeah. As far as any upcoming stuff, I got I'm going to a concert on Saturday. It's going to be a tribute to Neil Peart because it's going to be his 3-year anniversary of his death on Saturday. So there's a Rush tribute it's actually going to have Mike Portnoy. It's a band called Why Not, which is they do Rush covers, but they also do originals too. They've had some albums, I think maybe 2 or 3 albums original, but they're putting together like a tribute, and the proceeds go to cancer research that Neil passed from. I know Mike Portnoy's a part of it. Jonathan Dinklage, which he's a violin player. He played on he toured with Rush on the Clockwork Angels tour as part of the string ensemble, and a few from Anthrax, Frank Bello's going to be there. He's going to be a part of it, so it's going to be cool. It's going to be it's in Pennsylvania, so it's only like an hour and 20-minute drive for me. So I'm going with a couple of friends of mine, and we're making it a day. It's Saturday night, so I don't have to worry about working the next day. So that's going to be my next show. So
that's cool.
So I plan on recording it, so it'll probably be up on my channel after that if you guys want to check it out. Other than that, I look forward to the other shows with you guys. So, and Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Oh, yes, I was going to start off with that. Happy New Year, everybody. For some reason, I'm very optimistic about 2023. I feel so good about 2023. I don't know why. I woke up New Year's Day feeling great, and I still have that twinkle
Good.
in my eye. So,
Good.
so things are going well, and I will see and talk to you guys tomorrow. Everybody out there, thanks for watching. I saw several people going in and out and commenting here and there. I thank y'all very much for watching us. Once again, we are the Black Spinner Music Podcast. Catch us tomorrow on the BS Sessions with Mark, Charles, and Jerry. Good night. Good night, guys.
All right.
Have a good
I'll
night.
see y'all later.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.